Hi everyone, today Dad and I are going to be talking about superannuation. So Dad, we had a lot of questions about risk and return and how you should be invested in your superannuation portfolio when you're just starting out. Can you please touch on this a bit?
Sure, and look, it's a great question, and I think the first thing that it brings up is that a lot of people should be aware is superannuation is essentially a taxation structure that affords you tax savings over the lifetime of your investment to help you save for your own retirement, and distinct from that is how your superannuation is invested over time as well. So it's very important for you to set an investment strategy for your super fund and to probably stick to that, even though it may change as you age and your circumstances change over time. But for a lot of people starting out, I would probably say as a general proposition, the higher risk investments, i.e. the ones that are going to bounce around a bit in the short term, will probably prove very beneficial for them over the long term if they can stay in that kind of investment strategy. Particularly when it's something that, a 25-year-old is starting to get some money into superannuation with their first serious job, and they're not actually going to be able to access this money for 40 years. Doesn't really matter to them very much if their return falls in a particular 12-month time frame for 20 or 30%, if that's the price they've got to pay to have a longer term, higher performing portfolio.
We also had a lot of questions about salary sacrificing. Can you talk about this, please?
Sure. So salary sacrificing contributions to super is whereby you direct your employer to pay some additional superannuation contributions on your behalf in lieu of taking a salary. So this can absolutely be beneficial over the long term because, as you sort of know, one of the best things about investing over the long term is the magic of compounding investment returns. So the earlier that you start to put in some extra money into superannuation and the longer period of time these contributions can be compounded, the better you will be by the time that you actually get to draw down on your superannuation monies. But of course, whether or not you should do this is very much a question around your particular individual circumstances, and definitely this is something that I suggest that anyone who's thinking about it should seek some advice, because that money is locked up for a long period of time. That money could be used for other things in the here and now that maybe are going to be more beneficial for you, and obviously without knowing each individual circumstances, I don't know what the answer to that is.
And another common question that we had was, what is the difference between having insurance inside of your super or outside of your super? And how can you best decide where to have your insurance?
Okay, great question. So I guess the first thing is not every single type of life insurance can be held within superannuation. Typically the types that can be held inside superannuation are life insurance, total and permanent disability insurance, which is often abbreviated to TPD, and income protection insurance. Now, one of the advantages of running cover through superannuation is you can fund it out of your superannuation contributions and your contributions returns and also the earnings, and therefore it doesn't have a very big impact on your personal cash flow. One of the disadvantages is, I guess, over time that will, all other things being equal, erode your superannuation savings. But for a lot of people starting out, it's probably the only place they can afford to have some cover. And I think for someone starting out who maybe doesn't have any dependents that are relying on them, or a debt or a mortgage or anything like that, life cover may not be as important as making sure they're covered for some form of disability event or some form of event that meant they couldn't work for a period of time. So I'd strongly encourage people to have total and permanent disability cover and or some income protection cover. Both can be done outside super as well. With TPD, if you have it outside super, you just have to pay for it out of your own cash flow. But with income protection, it's not a bad thing to do outside of superannuation, because you do get a personal tax deduction for the premiums yourself, and then depending on what your marginal rate is, you'll get a rebate at the end of the year when you lodge your tax return.